1987, an illegal VHS tape started spreading across the country of Japan. They featured a man performing extreme drifting stunts with a white Toyota on one of the country's most dangerous mountain road. Almost immediately, the Japanese government banned the selling of these tapes in stores and magazines and made it illegal even to own one. Everything was under control until they discovered that the man behind the wheel was a professional racer who would become one of the most important Japanese figures in history. But what were Japanese authorities so afraid of that they felt the need to ban this video? Who was the man behind the wheel of that Toyota, and what drove him to do something so reckless? This is the story of the rebel whose Japan tried and failed to stop, Keiichi Tsuchiya. Keiichi Tsuchiya-san was born on January 30th, 1956, in the relatively small city of Tomi, north of Tokyo, Japan. His town was known for its proximity to winding roads known as Tugei. In the 60s, drivers called the Hashiriya would go on the infamous 7.5-mile mountain road called Ushui Pass to push their cars to the limit. Keiichi Tsuchiya would sit and listen to the battles of the Hashiriya at night, challenging each other to be the fastest on these dangerous narrow roads. These night battles made Keiichi so addicted to racing that one day, he drove his motorcycle 120 miles to Fuji Speedway just to see racing up close in person. There, among the racers battling for first position, a man was overtaking his opponents by sliding his car through corners. Little did anyone know that this man would change young Keiichi's life forever. You see, back in the 60s, cars' tire technology hadn't improved yet. We didn't have aerodynamics to keep us glued to the ground, and tires had way less grip than they do now, so oversteer was the norm. Most drivers of the era just balanced the slide and then pulled out of it. After all, staying in a slide too long and you could end up spinning out facing the wrong way. However, there was one man who would intentionally chuck his car into corners. Enter Kunimitsu Takahashi, better known as Kuni-san, a retired motorcyclist who eventually made his way from 2 wheels to 4. Takahashi would intentionally slide his car through corners at high speed and bypass his challengers. That driving style was essentially called drifting. At first, when people saw him on the track, they laughed at him because of wasting rubber. But when they saw his time, no one could beat it, and later found out his technique is faster. In a short period of time, that once looked stupid driving technique earned him several championships and a legion of fans who enjoyed the spectacle of burning tires. However, Kuni-san's journey to becoming the Drift Father was a fast, thrilling, and deadly journey that nearly cost him everything. Back in the 50s, Kuni-san kickstarted his career riding motorcycle races. He was the first Japanese rider to win the German Motorcycle Grand Prix in 1961, riding his 250cc Honda. Unfortunately, he almost lost his life at the Isle of Man TT, where he was injured due to a tragic accident with his bike. There, Kuni-san had to consider his choice of whether racing on 2 wheels is even worth his time anymore. Fortunately, it wouldn't take too long until Nissan thought, what if we put the fastest man on 2 wheels in a 4 wheels and see what would happen? They offered him a spot on their factory team in 1965, where he drove a Hakosuka GTR. To their surprise, he dominated all the races, thus not only giving him trophies, but also the love of an entire nation of motoring fans. During that period, the Drift Father would develop a technique that was more similar to the style of early Grand Prix racers of the 50s, where they would often be seen sliding the rear out to help the car turn despite the lack of traction. This technique that he would take from one of the Formula One history pages would create one of the most interesting driving styles at the moment, where it gave a rush of excitement to the huge crowd and fans in attendance. But our story isn't about the father of drifting, but rather about his fan. That day, among the fans cheering loudly, was a young Keiichi Tsuchiya, who would eventually go to do the same, not on racetracks, but in the dangerous mountain passes of Japan. Inspired by the Drift Father himself, Tsuchiya would later become a global phenomenon in the drifting world. Keiichi Tsuchiya kick-started his journey by practicing this driving technique on farmland roads for 4 years before attempting to race on the mountains. This was because he saw and understood the danger of the mountain roads, where a single mistake could mean death. Tsuchiya's first ever car was a Nissan Sunny B110. Other resources state it was a Nissan Skyline 2000 GT known as the KPGC 110. From time to time, he found himself off a cliff or against the side of a wall. Having snow in the wintertime further trained him to drive well on loose surface conditions, enhancing his car control skills again. The more he drove on these various road surfaces, the more he began to get comfortable with sliding the car through a corner. After a considerable amount of time practicing, the 20-year-old Tsuchiya finally began racing on the mountain. And when he had the opportunity to challenge top Hashiriya drivers, no one stood a chance because Keiichi was always well prepared. It didn't take him much to deem the title King of the Mountain. Keiichi was incredibly quick for how young he was and how slow a car he was driving, and would race others that own cars worth 3 times what he owns, which gave him street credibility among street racers. Drivers from all the regions were traveling to challenge Tsuchiya just to see how talented he was. This latter would disappear ahead of them like a ghost around corners, never to see them again. You see, people used to say luck is when opportunity meets preparation. For our hero Tsuchiya, he was always prepared that luck would hit him hard this time, because this young notorious rebel would be given an opportunity that would change his life forever. Drifting was once tied to illegal street practices, but now it has become a global motorsport, with major leagues like Formula Drift. However, the journey to this point was a long, dangerous, and often illegal journey that centered around one man who made one of the most successful movies and anime, and made a Corolla from the 80s worth more than a brand new Civic. And of course, it's not what you might be thinking right now, because he's not Keiichi Tsuchiya. I am just kidding. He is indeed none other than Keiichi Tsuchiya-san. You remember the opportunity that knocked on the doors of Keiichi? Well, Tsuchiya was offered a race seat for a small team in the Fuji Freshman Series in desperate need of a driver, and they took a chance and went with the street kid because they were basically out of options. Keiichi would officially begin his career in the Fuji Freshman Series in 1977, but the soul of illegal mountain racing would never leave him. One thing that quickly became apparent to Tsuchiya was the differences between him and the others on the track, mainly in money and experience. He didn't have the motorsport backup, and he was broke. Many of the drivers at the track that day had been racing cars since before the age of 10 and had been moving up the ladder ever since, as well as having either a family background of racing or a family well off enough to sponsor a race team. Therefore, instead of using the track for his practice, he went illegal and used the local roads of Ushui Pass, pushing himself and his car to the absolute limit. He practiced so much that he perfected every corner of these dangerous roads, earning the respect of other street racers. Thus, the urban legend of Keiichi Tsuchiya would begin. After non-stop practicing, Tsuchiya would enter the racetrack, where he absolutely dominated it. He would not only drift on the track, but also use it to his advantage. Unlike any other driver, this guy would carry his momentum through the corners and overtake cars on the outside like he was driving a USAC sprint car. He even drifted all of 100R at Fuji Speedway in the wet. Although he struggled, he pushed himself and got some podiums as a rookie. In 1981, he started racing part-time in a division much higher than what he had been racing, driving an 81 Toyota Starlet, and slowly climbing the year-end standings in the Fuji Freshman Series, where he would finish the season as a champion. When Keiichi dominated the Fuji Series, something kept him apart: his wallet. He wanted a new car, but he couldn't afford one. I mean, racing these underpowered cars was difficult, but again, a great learning experience. Yet knowing that you can do much better in a more powerful car is what was burning Keiichi Tsuchiya's soul. So, he went to the sponsors asking for money, and to his surprise, they said sure. That day, Tsuchiya would be given a car that he would never forget in his entire life. A car that would later be his partner in crime, the Hachiroku. Keiichi was picked up to drive the Advan-sponsored AE86 1984 Corolla GTS. When Tsuchiya saw the AE86 for the first time, it was love at first sight. Once they both paired together, you would see one thing: the AE86 crossing the line first. During many races on a downhill corner, he would drift the car and carry a better corner speed than his competitors. He dominated every race, scoring 9 podiums across 23 races. But how did Tsuchiya know the AE86 was the one, even though it wasn't all that powerful on paper? Well, the short answer is, Tsuchiya saw in it what others overlooked. While we see today the AE86 as a perfect drift machine, back in the 80s, it was just seen as a regular commuter car. But what Tsuchiya saw in it was how it could be used on track with a bit modifications. The car was modified with a focus on overall balance and handling, rather than just raw power. This included optimizing the suspension, steering, and weight distribution for optimal handling and responsiveness. By 1985, Tsuchiya took first in Class 3 with his AE86 in the All Japan Touring Car Championship. In 1986, he took 2 podiums in the Corolla Sprint Cup. And a year later, he said, "Let me try something new," and took a Honda Civic to a podium finish in the All Japan Touring Car Championship. Together, the AE86 and Keiichi dominated the Fuji Freshman Series for 6 championships. Tsuchiya was always a bit of a showman, and liked to give the crowd something to cheer for and be interested in. Since he was winning, he found it boring, so he started pushing things wilder, exaggerating his drifting, pushing the track limits, driving fans wild, and pissing off the officials. Eventually, the officials had had enough of it and threatened to suspend his license. His on-track exploits led him to earn the title of Dorikin or Drift King at only 28 years old of age. Following this, he would also make his proper first television appearance, debuting for car and racing magazine Best Motoring. Think of it as Japan's early version of Top Gear, even though the original Top Gear and Best Motoring started around the same time, and they had fairly different formats. But with Tsuchiya being one of the hosts, it boosted the show's credibility and its appeal. But that wouldn't be the only notable media appearance he made in 1987. Around this time, many tuning shops in and around his area started contacting him for performance testing and supervision, and eventually they had got together with him for a project that would be one part advertisement for the companies, and one part Tsuchiya being allowed to drift the mountain passes again, but this time with an 86 tuned by the best these shops had to offer, and the name of this project was Plusby. This project nearly single-handedly turned drifting into a national craze, with thousands of young teenagers just getting their licenses watching the video, then taking their newfound or often non-existent skills to drift down the mountain passes. And it's honestly amazing that it became as popular as it did, because this wasn't put on TV. You could only get it through illegal VHS tapes. Tsuchiya got bored with racing tracks, so he went again to the Touge. That time was the same time when the Japanese economy and car culture were booming. To help popularize drifting in the Japanese culture, a handful of local tuning companies and car magazines came together to make a series of short films on what the Touge life is all about, and the star was the Drift King himself. This short film goes on for 20 more minutes, where 2 movie copies were distributed through garages and editions of Carboy, and eventually reached all around the country, with hundreds of thousands of people watching the Drift King tear it up in his iconic Toyota AE86. After that video, the tuning scene went crazy. The impact of the Plusby series made the drifting scene explode overnight, but soon, things would take a dark turn for Tsuchiya. You see, in Japan, street racing wasn't just frowned upon, it was a serious crime. Driving like that on public roads is completely illegal. But filming it, and then sharing it with the entire country, that's what really triggers the alarms. When Keiichi Tsuchiya released his now legendary Plusby video, it didn't take long for the police to take action. They banned the sale of the film and began pulling every copy they could find from stores and magazines. But thankfully, the videos are still available here on YouTube. Authorities even pressured Japan's racing organization to suspend Tsuchiya's license, effectively banning him from competition. For a professional race car driver, this was embarrassing. Getting caught drifting illegally on the streets with the footage spreading everywhere, and then getting banned by the authorities. It wasn't exactly the image of a polished athlete, but somehow, this worked to his advantage because his fan base and fame began to expand. You could say that he is a rebel of some sort because he was just a person who went from nowhere to success out of determination with no racing background. And it didn't took too long for authorities to realize that it was too late to stop him, because this censorship made Plus-B videos even more desirable, where these tapes started spreading in the dark market, leading to the popularity of Keiichi's illegal drifting. And once again, Tsuchiya had made a massive impact through his dangerous driving style. He once said that people want something more exciting to watch, and he surely proved that. Even today, YouTube is filled with creators recording dangerous stunts, and the videos that go viral are almost always the most thrilling ones. We even made a video on our channel breaking down how some notorious street racers use danger to go viral. You can check it out from here. Tsuchiya's impact was so strong this time that somehow he returned to racing again because his ban was lifted the very next year in 1988, and he got right back into it immediately, taking a BMW E30 to third place in the All Japan Touring Car Championship. By the late 1980s, the Hashiriya started using his technique to hunt the mountain road. Young adults all around Japan would try and give drifting a shot themselves, and this new method of driving caught on fast to the point where the mountains of Japan would echo with the sounds of engines and tires throughout the night. Thanks to Tsuchiya, a new Touge culture was born. Local tuner magazine Carboy would become filled with photos of Toyota 86 racing and drifting all around the country, leading to the creation of the very first drifting competition in 1986 by Carboy magazine, taking advantage of Plus-B going viral. In 1989, Keiichi and Daijiro Inada of Option magazine launched their own drifting events known as Ikaten. It was a series purely for fun, and nothing was taken seriously. Yet surprisingly, it boosted Keiichi's career, eventually leading him to become a judge in the D1 GP. In the 90s, Tsuchiya-san would be all around motorsports, not as a threat, but as a cult hero. The Drift King proved his skills legally this time, driving in the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1995 and 1999, bringing class wins. But even as Tsuchiya earned respect on some of the world's most prestigious circuits, he still felt something was missing. Driving had always been his voice, but now he wanted to tell a story. And indeed, he took a new path where he had a core role in directing the famous anime Initial D, where the story of Takumi was inspired by the Drift King himself. Tsuchiya assisted in the recording of car audio for the anime, and surprisingly, Initial D spread like wildfire, not just in Japan, but all over the world. Its impact was so strong that it brought the term Touge drifting to the world. Keiichi also served as a stunt coordinator and stuntman on the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, where he also made a cameo appearance. Most of the drifting scenes you saw in that movie were actually done by the Drift King himself. In 1994, Tsuchiya-san teamed up with his original inspiration, Kunimitsu Takahashi, to race for him in his aptly named team Kunimitsu, driving their now iconic Advan NSX. He would end up taking this to a win at the 12 Hours of Tokuchi, a 5th place finish in the Suzuka, and a win at Le Mans. This guy managed to win the GT2 class at Le Mans in an NSX, beating out his closest competitor by 2 laps. Then he jumped into a Dodge Viper to take on the All Japan Touring Car Championship, just because he could. And if that wasn't enough, he brought his style to stock car racing, doing 3 separate NASCAR exhibitions, 2 at Suzuka and 1 in California, where he wheeled that beast around like he was channeling Davey Allison himself. In 1999, he would race Le Mans again with his teammates Toshio Suzuki and Ukyo Katayama, this time in the Toyota GT1, where he would only finish second, only 1 lap down from the BMW Motorsport team running the incredible BMW V12 LMR. This was also around the time when his drifting crossed over to the US, with early exhibitions at tracks like Willow Springs and others across California. From 2000 to 2003, Tsuchiya raced for Team ARTA in another NSX, this time in the Old Japan Touring Car Championship, now known as the GT500, with his best finish being a second place in the championship in 2001. However, by late 2003, Tsuchiya made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the drifting community. The Drift King announced he was retiring from professional racing at the ripe age of 47 and moving into a managerial position for Team ARTA. But this wasn't the end, because on January 25, 2004, a hot version of Best Motoring organized an event for Tsuchiya at the Tsukuba circuit, where fans could see Tsuchiya racing for the last time and driving some of his most iconic cars from throughout his career, from a TRD-tuned 86 to the team's Tyson Nissan Skyline R32, and ending the day by trying to set a new GT car record at the track, ending his racing career as the fastest man on one of Japan's best tracks. And that's where Tsuchiya's career basically ends. Today, Keiichi Tsuchiya is working for Honda and still has a hand in many drifting championships around the globe. In his garage, you will find a special Toyota AE86 made specifically for the Drift King. Toyota itself felt that he was the person to represent the car most and presented him with a restored AE86 through TRD. So if you ever find yourself on a mountain pass and spot a nearly white AE86 ahead of you, just don't keep up with it, as he could end your life while he goes past you. Keiichi Tsuchiya rose from a rebellious teenager, street racing in the quiet hours of Japan's winding Touge, to a world-class driver standing at the top podiums. He changed the world by turning his wheels in the other direction. He is the pioneer of this. Much like Bob Marley is to reggae, Tony Hawk is to skateboarding, Elvis is to rock and roll. Yes, he is already a legend, and his name is forever attached to drifting. Keiichi, the last part of the name Ichi, means one, the first, the best. And honestly, you definitely can't say more.